2A.
All right.
All right.
All right. Would you all join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Thank you. Okay. So we'll call the November 3rd Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. Before we get started with minutes and housekeeping and whatnot, we have a new lead reporter over here in the corner we'd like to introduce. It's Nate Poole. So Nate, welcome to the facility here. Welcome to the town. And yeah, we can put you on the hot seat if you want, but if we want to come up and introduce him.
I think you did most of it.
Yeah.
I'm most excited about Nate coming from the University of Illinois, so got a good hire there. So
Yeah.
Awesome.
He's been with us since May, and he's doing a great job. And we're moving him over to the Twinability desk. So
Great.
got
Yeah.
to pass some Bristol's. So
We'll try to keep things exciting for you. Plenty of-
I'm not going to repeat it, Jeff. Sorry.
No, mic check.
So
Yeah.
use him, enjoy him. I think he'll do a good job for you.
All
So
right. Good. All right.
Use
Welcome.
him. Does that mean I can
Yep.
have him come shovel my backyard?
yeah.
Yeah.
We'll send you a bill though.
As long as it's a good story.
Oh,
Good
okay.
story. So, yeah.
Well,
All right. We'll move right on to the minutes. We've got October 6th and the 20th minutes. I guess everybody get a chance to take a look at them. We want to,
I'll move the minutes of the 6th.
want to move the 6th?
Yeah.
Tom seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right.
Then I'll move the
Passes.
minutes of the 20th,
Move
because I
them
think
to-
Lou was not there.
No.
Yeah.
So
Lou's there.
I'll second.
Yeah. Okay. Mark, sorry.
I get a question.
Tom seconds. Yeah. Any discussion, Mark?
That was on, I'm sorry, I lost my place here.
That's all right. Yeah.
It was the 20th
Yeah.
on the financial reports on accounts payable warrant 19. I didn't make any motion. I didn't follow up from Frazier. It was,
That should have been Tom.
that was a Hager.
Yeah.
one, so I
On 19. Yeah.
just want to make sure that
Okay.
it's clarified.
So Matt, that on financial reports on line 2 here, we just got to change, it should be Frazier Anderson on there instead of
Okay,
Mark. So, yeah, so we can make those changes.
I'll
Okay.
make my amended as noted.
Amended as noted. All righty.
Second,
So seconds, discussion, and all those in favor?
Staying, I wasn't there.
Who abstains? Good. All right, we'll move those along. So
Make a motion for payroll warrant 21.
Second.
Lou seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right, we have AP 22.
I'll make a motion for AP 22.
All right.
Second.
Seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right, and passes. So move that right along. Matt, do we have some presentations tonight?
we have a few.
Yeah. All right.
Want to introduce you to, once again, Sarah Risley. She's going to give us an update on the Shellfish resiliency resource study that we've been doing in partnership with the Darling Center, also the towns of Newcastle and Bremen are partners with us in this as well. So turn it over to Sarah.
All right. Welcome, Sarah. Good to see you again. Yeah.
Great to see you all too. And we've got that line up there. So yes, thank you for having me again. It's wonderful to be here. Almost, I guess, a year since we last spoke. When my lab mate Melissa Britch and I provided an update, and so now we're coming back with the final report because we've finished the study and we finished analyzing the data. So we're here to share those results.
Awesome. Thank you.
So first, just kind of a quick recap, because I know it has been a year. So this is a collaboration that started in part or started by being funded by the Broadreach Fund, partnership with Damariscotta, Bremen, and Newcastle, and us researchers at the Darling Marine Center. And so we started out in 2019 by doing those population shellfish surveys, and we had intended to continue doing that in 2020. But with the pandemic, we weren't able to conduct field work. So we had to take a moment to step back and think, what can we do where we can still be collecting information about what's happening in the river, but from a safe distance? And so we figured, why not ask the folks who live and work on the river about what they're observing, so we can collect some local knowledge about what's happening and use that to support decision making. And so that led us to develop a project where the primary goal was to document local knowledge, so information from the people who know it best about the Damariscotta River. And we were looking to collect information about, so what's changing in the biology, what's changing in human use on the river, particularly what's happening with the clam mudflats. And we are also interested in identifying areas of importance. So what areas are important for harvesters? What about recreational fishing, aquaculture? What's actually going on? And then how are these people, because we have a lot of activity going on the river, where are folks interacting and where are areas of overlap? And so to do that, we created a local knowledge mapping study, and this had two parts. So we recruited folks over the phone. So we had a list of harvesters, list of local contacts that people recommended. And then when folks agreed, we sent this map packet in the mail. So it had a booklet that looked really similar to the main Atlas roadmap with zoomed in pages of different sections of the river. And then folks could apply stickers showing the locations of shellfish, if they were a shellfish harvester, or different use activities if they were, say, a fisherman or a rec boater. And so after folks completed that map booklet, we then did a phone interview with them. So we talked to them on the phone and gathered additional context information about what changes have they observed, what has changed as far as their harvesting behavior, and then just other concerns that they might have. And so overall, we had 28 participants help us out with the study. And those are broken down into two different groups. So we refer to it as a use category, but those are your aquaculture farmers, your recreational fishermen, folks who are out boating on the river, or conservationists. And then our shellfish category was 10 out of those 11 were professional shellfish harvesters. And then we had one recreational harvester. And I think the most interesting thing about this group that had that worked with us was, look at how many years of experience they all had, you know, 30 to 35 years of time on the river. So they've seen a lot of change.
Chunk of information.
Yeah.
How did you identify all those people?
So we used a method called snowball sampling, which basically means, so I talked with Lou. Lou recommends one friend. That friend recommends 4 different other friends, and we kind of contacted people based on that. And then Matt also shared the shellfish harvester license information with us. So we had their emails and their phone numbers. So we contacted them that way. Okay, and so today we're coming and talking about this final report. So we processed the map data. So we got the map packets back and basically collected all that information. And then we coded all the interviews. So we basically transcribed them and looked at them carefully and took note of themes and important things that we saw. And this report covers a lot of information. And so this shows the full outline. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the broader parts of this. But for today, I wanted to just kind of zoom in and focus a bit on talking about just the shellfish resource and changes that we've heard about happening. And just a really quick orientation, because the Damariscotta is a big river. So when our study participants typically talked about the river, they divided it in half. So you can see up at the top, the Damariscotta town landing and the bridge right there. And then in the middle, we have Glidden ledges. And that's what people usually use as that landmark to divide the river. And so they'll say above Glidden ledge is the upper river, below Glidden ledge is the lower river. So we'll just be using that today. And so this graph just kind of shows a broad view of the different types of activity that are happening either above, below, or across the entire river. And so we have everything going on in this river, from bait fishing to aquaculture to recreational boating. And as you can see, the shellfishing in that sort of lighter green color there on that left column is mainly taking place above glidden ledges. So there's a little bit happening below, but it's primarily concentrated right up above near Hog Island and the town landing. And then you can also see in the darker blue, the aquaculture, that's just chat, is primarily up above glidden ledges, but it also is seen below and then also seen across the river. So it's a bit more uniform across the river. And so one of the really neat pieces of that we got from the interviews was we got all this really interesting context about the shellfish species. So when we were talking to harvesters, we got information about which species they're targeting. So the main targets are softshell clams and oysters. And then some folks are also harvesting quahogs, and then on low tides, razor clams. And then we heard a lot of great information about what habitat do they look for, because they don't just go out randomly in the mudflat. They're targeting particular areas that have a certain sediment type or look a certain way or are in a certain zone in the tidal heights. And so this information was really helpful because when we got back out into the field this summer, we were able to use this habitat data to target where we actually surveyed, because we're trying to target the shellfish resource, not the entire mudflat. And so this helped inform all of our survey methods. And so we also, through the interviews and through the maps, got some information about shellfish abundance, distribution, and diversity. And so this map here, I'll kind of talk through it a little bit because it's a bit small, because of course, Damariscotta is a very big river. But if you, so the map on the right is for reference, and then the map on the left is basically the outline of the river, right? So we can see at the top, Great Salt Bay, and where it narrows, the bridge and the town landing. And on the scale on the right, you see in the dark blue is high clam abundance, meaning here's a mudflat where you're going to find a lot of clams. And then all the way down to the light blue, which is here's low clam abundance. So as you can see from the graph here, harvesters reported that there aren't high abundance clam areas in the Damariscotta, but there are several medium and low clam abundance areas, again, sort of concentrated around Hog and near the upper landing. One thing to know about the lower river is since we are targeting license holders in Damariscotta and Newcastle, our data is a bit more skewed to the north because we just had more folks who were more familiar with those mudflats. So that's why the data is a little sparse further south. And then this map here, similar kind of style, but instead of abundance, we're talking about richness. And when I say richness, that means here's a mudflat where I can find either one type of clam species or one type of shellfish species, and that would get a score of 1. Or if I could actually find 3 different kinds of shellfish, so I can go and harvest oysters, clams, and quahogs in a single flat, that gets that darker score of 3. And so you can see that even though we may be having only medium or low clam abundance, we have quite a bit of diversity here in this river. And so up in those areas, again, around Hog Island, you're going to see that score of 3, meaning that harvesters can go out there and harvest 3 different kinds of shellfish on a single flat, which is pretty interesting. And then from the interviews, we also got some great information about predators, so highlighting which ones are of most concern to harvesters. And I'm sure, as you all know, green crabs were top of the list, followed by ribbon worms, so milky ribbon worms, those wonderful tapeworms out there, and then boring snails. And then finally, from the shellfish interviews, we also got a lot of great information about what harvesters are concerned about. And so these are the top 3 concerns identified by harvesters as something that they're worrying about in their day-to-day. And so first on the list was folks are worried about aquaculture activity and about the introduction of oysters. And so they're worried about that. And then second, Folks saw that decreased waterfront access is also a threat. So that's walk-in access to the flats. Many folks are now buying boats and doing that, but then they sometimes have trouble putting their boat in at the town landing to get out to the flats as well. And then finally, predation pressure. So those green crabs, the snails, and the worms they're worried about as a threat to the resource as well. And then the last point of the full report that I'll talk about tonight is just changes in trends. So this is from across the spectrum. So both shellfish harvesters and regular river users. And this graph here is really interesting. So I'll kind of walk us through this a little bit. We basically compiled different changes that people identified in the interviews. So for example, kayaking and paddleboarding activity. And so these bars here are basically showing the net score for how people perceive that to be increasing or decreasing. So for example, if we asked 4 people and 3 people said that kayaking and paddleboarding was increasing, but 1 person said it was decreasing, then they would have gotten a score with that +3 and that -1 of a +2. So 2 increase. So think of it kind of like the average effect of each of these things. So as you can see, the most cited increase on the river was aquaculture activity. And the number at the end of the bar there, that number 21, shows that 21 people contributed to this score of about 31 or 35. So that means multiple people mentioned it multiple times. That was then followed by coastal development, motor boating, and the wild oyster fishery as things that people are seeing increasing on the river. And then as far as decreasing, folks identified river access and navigability. So not only getting on the river, but maneuvering down the river as being something that has declined. And then they've also noticed that the clam fishery has declined on the river. And so across the board, these are the main observations that people are seeing on the river. And so I kind of want to wrap up just by saying, this was just a really neat project and was such a great opportunity to get to see what people know. And it's incredibly important to get information from harvesters and other river experts who live and work on the river and have all this great understanding of what's happening on the mudflats and in the estuary. I will say there's a lot of investment into this in time. You're making phone calls, you're sending out mailers, but the payoff is huge. And we were just surprised and blown away by how much useful information we were able to get from a study like this. We were able to identify important areas in the river. We were able to get a snapshot of what's happening with the shellfish resource. And we were able to identify challenges and different priorities that people are seeing or would like to have addressed. And so we see this information asking folks what's going on as being helpful to informing management decisions, but also informing research in the future, conservation, and thinking about ways that we can enhance the shellfish fishery. And so we've actually put this to work. Those pictures are going to take a second to load. But this project has inspired us to create a community science monitoring program. So we started a partnership with Lincoln Academy, and they have been working with us to set up long-term monitoring sites in the river. And so we used the map data from the study to identify sites. And so these were the areas that harvesters said were important. That's where we're going. And then, as I mentioned before, the habitat data that we got from harvesters as well informs where we're looking in the river. So as you can see on the left, that's students doing a clam survey, so targeting clam habitat. We'll also find quahogs there. And then on the right, we have students doing a oyster survey, so targeting oyster habitat. And then we also find quahogs there as well. And so this was a student group that came and helped us this summer. They're coming out again this fall, and we hope to have them out again this spring. And we're thinking really critically about how can we continue this as a long-term partnership into the future, because it's great for students and it's great for us to get information about what's happening on the flats. And so my very last plug too, before I change it over to questions, is I did want to just highlight this is a project that's related to this report, but a little bit different because looking backwards rather than forwards. So here we have my lab mate, Melissa Britch, and my advisor, Heather Leslie, who also is on the Shellfish Committee and the director of the Darling Marine Center, created what's called a story map. So basically think of it as a website that walks you through the history of research on the Damariscotta River. And it's very interactive. They have the maps and photos, and it's a really interesting tool to just kind of learn more about the history of how people have been studying this river for years. And so I think it's really interesting to kind of place this work that we're doing in context of this long history of people studying and really caring about this estuary. So the link is up there, and I'll circulate this PowerPoint with Matt probably after this. And then also feel free to email me if you'd like it as well. But with that, I'd like to thank our friends and supporters of the Darling Marine Center, including anonymous donors who supported my fellowship here. I'd also like to thank the Maine Broadreach Fund, the SK Fund, and the Mitchell Center Diana Davis Spencer Scholarship. And thank you for your time, and I'll answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah,
Yes, of course.
That's a great project. It's interesting you're tying it into the history of research, and I was curious to see how this project compares. Has something been done like this previously in your findings, or is there anything to the scope?
There's been a lot of student involvement for sure in the past, and there's been research on mudflats in Lowe's Cove at the Darling Center, and of course lots of other long-term monitoring efforts as far as water quality. So I think we're part of a rich history of people making the effort to really study this river, and so we're just kind of trying to continue that tradition. Yeah.
So tying it into Lincoln Academy, that's, they're getting students involved. That's
exactly,
that's
and
great.
they love it, and I don't know, we have a great time together.
Sure. Yeah. So, but Dom's got some questions. Any questions from the board here?
Yeah, I have a couple. When was the last study on the health of the river? Wrapping up whatever monitoring had taken place, and when do you think the next study of the health of the river would be?
Do you mean as far as like a state of the
quality,
estuary report like this?
Water quality, other, elements, mud, whatever.
Yeah, so water quality monitoring is happening from a number of organizations. So Coastal Rivers, I know, is collecting water quality data. Also, the Department of Marine Resources collects water quality data. And then Darling Marine Center, we also do some sampling there. So that's a great point, that's something that we could certainly include in a report like this in the future. We ourselves aren't collecting water quality data because we're a little too busy digging in the flats. But I think it's a great point that should be integrated into a study like this.
And I have a suggestion on the green crabs. You can harvest those, which I did, and I cooked them, and they're quite tasty. And there's a restaurant in Portland that sort of specializes in them. So they're they're small, but the meat is really good. And that might be a new crop for the river. And it kills two birds with one stone because they're a predator. So if you eliminate the population, it'll help the clam population for sure.
I think that's a great idea, and I think you should keep on harvesting them and show other people how to do it.
Trap over off your dock with some old fish, and you'll get them.
That's awesome. That's really good to hear.
Great. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I got a question. As far as your research, as far as the clam population dropping over the years, what do you think the main cause is?
I think it's a pretty complicated question. I think predation pressure from green crabs might have something to do with it, but the water temperature also has been increasing, so maybe that's something. And then always a question with clams and other shellfish species is the question of larval supply. So how many baby clams are getting spawned into the water and then actually landing on the mudflats? And so that was part of the study too, is we did put out recruitment boxes, they call them. Basically just picture a 1 by 2 foot wooden frame with pet screen on top, and the baby clams land in it. And then we pull them in the fall and we count them. And so we're doing that in the next month. So we'll be out next week with some Lincoln students pulling recruitment boxes, and then the following week as well. And so that'll give us some information about what's the larval supply. And then that also gives you an idea of what's the predation pressure, because if they're protected in this little cage, they're not going to get eaten by crabs most likely. But then we take a sample right next to it in the mud right nearby, and then you can compare and see, okay, there is 50 clams in the box, but none outside. So that shows you a bit more about predation pressure. So it's something we're looking into, but it's a really good and a really complicated question, I think.
Is anybody talking about seeding clams like they do with oysters? That's my question.
Yeah, I think a number of different shellfish committees across the state definitely do that as a strategy. I think people are talking about it more. I know over on the Potomac, they have an upweller. So basically they have adult clams that they're having this upweller that they're hoping to have spreading seed on the flat. So there are a number of different strategies that shellfish committees have tried in the past. And I know that the Damariscotta Newcastle also did seeding at some point. Is that correct?
Right. One of the requirements of shellfish committees throughout the state is that they have some sort of conservation program. And many of the communities have tried seeding with limited success, unfortunately, because I think the main reason is predators get into the seeded areas and snarf up the little clams. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they've tried everything. I think they're if you talk to our shellfish committee members, they get pretty discouraged about what has happened in their attempts to replenish the resource.
Mhm.
And that's, all the more reason why this study is so important.
Yeah. Any other questions? And if not, I'll step off the podium.
Sure, thank you for
Thank you
coming in.
very
We
much.
appreciate it.
Yeah, I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks for
everybody for the
your
work,
time.
and your team's
Sure.
worked hard on that, so. Thank
Sarah,
you.
grab some bananas on the way out.
Bananas.
Should have made that important announcement, Matt.
But-
Thank you. Thank you for coming in. Appreciate
What's the story on the bananas?
More copies.
There's extra bananas available from the police department from Trick and Trunk or Treat. So there's a box of bananas out there.
Oh, my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah, no candy.
That's what we need to do. I'll have a banana and then it'll be,
Yeah, yeah.
listen, look at those monkeys.
Jeff, do you need a few minutes?
No, you can go ahead. I'm just trying to make sure I understand what's going on with sound.
Okay, yeah, I just say, you let me know and. Right. Oh, we lost, Josh ran out here. Right. That was a good presentation. We've got a couple more, Matt, don't we?
Yeah.
Go on to, yeah.
If you want me to jump down, I can just mention that Audrey Huffnagel would love to talk to the board directly about her request, but she was unable to make it tonight.
Okay.
So I can reschedule her for 2 weeks from tonight.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so we'll table that. And that was under, under citizens' comments.
Okay, oh, that was on the food.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is on clean water.
Oh, okay.
And clean air.
Right. Give everybody a few minutes.
Want to move on to some other items?
We can, yeah, I think.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out that the delay on that is really long. and I'm
Yeah.
not sure why. I
Jeff-
think what we may need to do is have people call in on the phone. But I don't know how we're gonna get them. Because the delay is like 10 seconds. We're not gonna be able to.
On, through the Zoom. Yeah.
So if we could just have them call into the Zoom meeting, and then we can have a phone on the Zoom meeting and just hear it through phone. I mean, I don't know how else. we
Can they show their PowerPoint?
Yeah, that should work.
Okay, so the video is
I just don't
fine,
know
just
why
the
the
sound,
audio-
Jeff. Yeah, okay. Yeah, who do we have coming up next, Matt? We had Wright Pierce, correct? And
Yes.
how many were on the presentation for that? Was it just,
George is
Jan
there. Bob Quantz is going to be listening in.
Okay.
But then Jan Wegman
Right.
and Mike Zarba are going to be doing the presentation.
Okay.
And there's Mike and Jan.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna get the phone number here.
Yes.
Little technical difficulties bound to happen. Yeah. This day and age.
Jeff, would it help for me to get on to my computer and,
No, we need audio.
oh,
What we need someone to do is be able to, well, we could join with your computer and use the audio out of your
Yeah.
computer. Okay, let's do that. I'll bring your- Listen out of your computer. Oh,
No pressure, Jeff. No
I
pressure.
don't think it's gonna work. We're gonna get a lot of feedback.
Yeah.
No, no, it'll work. We'll hear it. Go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead.
Turn the mic off. We'll just use this. Don't do it. Go ahead. Please.
Yeah,
do
go
it. Yeah, it'll work.
We'll give it a go and see what happens. Yeah.
It's too rambunctious of this.
Yeah. Think we should put some hold music on. Maybe we get a little
Elevator music.
elevator music.
All of our selectmen are busy. The next available selectman will.
Nate, we don't need a report on our technical difficulties. You
No, I
can.
think we can.
yeah, you're on mine. You're linked up with me.
Take a break, talk amongst yourselves. Yeah, I can hear the delay.
Because it's,
Yeah.
yeah, otherwise, I don't know why that's.
Yeah.
I think you should close it out and start it back up. Definitely clear it up.
I have to stop. a whole meeting.
In case we have someone gets out of control and starts
Oh, is that
yelling
the
profanities.
is that the
You can mute it out.
sensor button?
Sensor.
that-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why don't you just move on some of these shorter
Yeah.
items?
Let's,
So, yeah, Mike and Jan and George, if you can hang on a few minutes here. Why don't we talk about the CLC ambulance
Mhm.
budget meeting? Tom and Josh were there. The budget has decreased since this group last, or for us at least, we're down to about 160,000.
Yeah.
And I think, what is it, December 6th, they're going to make the final decision? Is that what
Yes.
I saw?
okay, yeah, so we can hear from Josh and Tom and can fill us in a little bit on the meeting.
Well, we've talked about this already in a couple of venues, but to recap, as you all know, Nicholas Bryant, the chief of CLC, came and gave us a presentation about the whys and wherefore for the budget and why it was needed and why the increases were needed, which were predominantly associated with salaries and other salary related elements like payroll tax, et cetera. And it was a significant jump in what we've experienced in the past couple of years. And he explained that, getting an echo.
Go there.
He explained that that was due to the fact that they were way behind as far as keeping pace with competition and being able to retain their staff. And he was concerned that it was sort of a statewide issue for EMS personnel, not only in this town, but in other towns, nearby towns. They're all trying to keep and hold on to the staff that they have for a variety of reasons. And for obvious benefits to the cities involved. So he made a strong case for getting the increases in salary. And at the meeting, subsequent meeting after his presentation at the ambulance service, there was a general consensus that the service itself was outstanding, that the towns wanted to maintain that level of service, that they were alarmed about the dramatic increase in expenses. However, they recognized that they were probably a necessity. So there was general support for the increases in the budget overall.
Mhm.
And I would say 90% of that is salary related. However, and Josh can reiterate this as well,
there was not a consensus at all on the approach towards the allocation of these expenses, not only for this year, but every year. And particularly South Bristol, which ironically has a very large endowment, I understand, but nevertheless, they felt that the current formula penalizes them because they have a small number of calls and they want it more call related than tax rate related. And so the formula that's been in place, which is what they were arguing against, had been in place apparently for 10 years. So it's not like a new formula, but every year, apparently this thing comes up for debate. Maybe Josh could confirm that, but it seems like it's a common topic. And it's going to have to be dealt with because it's not going away. So we sort of generally agreed that there would be follow-on meetings where the towns would get together and try to come up with another formula. Actually, during the meeting, Nick Bryan, the chief, ran several formulas at the request of South Bristol. And the formulas varied from, 50% of tax value, 25% population, 25% call volume to other, cuts of the same thing. And bottom line is, I think the maximum change to Damariscotta through any of those formula changes would be like another net 16,000. So I think South Bristol was expecting a dramatic change in their allocation based on these other formulas. In fact, one of the formulas he ran was one they suggested. So that not seeing that dramatic change mid-meeting, I think people started to fold their cards and decided, well, all right, we'll go with it this year, but we got to address it going forward. One other thing that was contentious was that apparently there are some towns that are on contract, like Noblesboro and Jefferson and Edgecombe.
On Jefferson and Edgecombe.
Okay, on that Jefferson and Edgecombe. And their allocate or their contracts differ in terms of their formulas. So some are getting a better deal than others. And granted, those are contracts and that's subject to negotiation. On the other hand, with the dramatic increases all the other towns are experiencing, we suggested that we revisit the Edgecombe formula because they're getting such a deal, far better than anybody else. And since the rest of us are going to pay this extra freight, there ought to be a change to their formula. So the contract apparently can be canceled by either party. It's a one-year contract, but it can be canceled. So I think that'll come up again on December 6th, whether we're going to ask that it be canceled. And there was thought about leaving them for one more year, but telling them that the following year, they're going to have to come up to par with everybody else. We just don't think it's fair. They're getting the same level of service, but they're paying less than other towns. And regardless of how it was in the past, and maybe that was negotiated in the past, it doesn't make sense going forward. So I think there was general consensus that will change as well. That sort of wraps it up. I'm sure Josh can add some other color to it, but or ready, any comments? He witnessed the whole thing. So.
Yeah. So currently they're moving ahead with the formula that was been in place for a while.
Yeah.
That was agreed upon. So yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to add anything, Josh? Or?
No, I think Tom covered it, so pretty good.
All right. Well, yeah, well, they do provide excellent service. I don't think any of us can deny that. So, yeah. All right.
Lou, did you have
We can
anything
bring.
you wanted to report on the budget
Yeah.
committee?
Well, two things I'd like to mention. First of all, we are very, very fortunate that we have an excellent financial team at the county. They have made many changes over the years. They are not borrowing as much money in their lean period as they used to. They've been investing money as we do to take and get some interest. But just looking for my notes. But the budget at this point is not finalized. There are still certain things that have to be decided, such as they haven't got final figures on insurances or benefits or what have you. This version that I have, I'll pass it around if anybody wants to, is the very first version. It's not the final version. It shows about a 10% increase over last year. And like many organizations that we're dealing with, the major increases are due to payroll, benefits, and contract services. They are experiencing the same things that the ambulance service is experienced of retaining some of their staff, especially the sheriff's office, etc. I had something else I was going to mention. They are taking and putting money into their reserves. Still.
Is that increase, Lou, from,
Uh,
is that an increase? or
no,
just kind of a flat
it's-
amount? Yeah.
It's up and down.
Yeah.
Mostly. But $778,000 they're requesting, which is a $720,000 increase over last year. But it's going into things, they're taking it out of some of the departments, and it's going into things like, let's see here. ASK program, kind of thing, probate court, witness fee reserve, placeholder, non-union placeholder. There was very little controversy on the whole budget. It was so well laid out. The thing they argued the most on is one projected increase is to put in some electrical stations
Oh,
for the cars,
for county vehicles?
for county,
County
well,
vehicles?
for travelers, etc. The stipulation was made that a formula be worked out so that it was paid for by the public that was using it. And I will pass around the figures so you can look at them, go from there.
Take a look. Yeah. Thank you. Lou. Any questions for Lou?
I got a question, Lou, then where
Yeah.
would they put these stations if the county is doing this?
They have no idea at this point. It's in the planning stages.
Planning stages.
Okay,
And I thought the figures for the stations was a little high compared to what we did downtown.
We might have bought them at the right time.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are still some grants, et cetera, out there.
Hello?
I couldn't make
Yeah.
copies.
Oh, that's all right.
My computer was out.
Oh, no, there are copies of them.
You must have got some. Have you got those yet?
No, these?
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen
Okay.
anything yet.
Yeah. We could take a look. So,
You can take a look. Keith.
Okay, but these are outdated now, right?
Yeah.
Because is the increase going down?
I-
with the
We
revised
don't know.
version?
Well, it will depend on the information that
10%
comes
is-
in.
That's hefty.
significant.
So,
Thank you, Lou.
That's about, for us, that would be
46,000.
50,000, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was, I was surprised at how sparsely attended the members were.
Well, they used to have those meetings at night. They have them during the day now.
They did this one, yeah.
Yeah, they ought to go back to having them at night.
All right, thank you, Lou. Matt, we're waiting, yeah.
Well,
we're-
if you want to,
I
I mean,
can do the focus thing.
Do we have
Yeah,
on the
focus
historic
group, and-
elements?
and,
Yeah,
George was going to be here for that too.
well, that's what I wondered. I knew you had George involved in it too, so.
Yeah, so if you'd like, rather than wait, John,
Yeah.
I hate to be bouncing all over the place.
No, no,
but
let's keep moving along. Oh,
This was
Yeah.
very good news that we finally got
Mhm.
the governor's deed, the lease agreement, and, well, the license agreement. The lease agreement is something that Jim Gallagher drafted up in our behalf. But I don't know, John, do you want to?
come on up, John, fill us in.
Yeah.
Exciting things happening.
Yeah, I think we're finally got some good positive momentum going. You know, Matt sent around both the governor's deed and an agreement for the, I would say, the tip of the property, which is so the governor's deed is to use the property, that everything except for, again, that tip that they want to maintain in case they want to make a intersection change. Leave that to the town. All lined up for a lease agreement between the chamber and the town for us to be able to keep moving on. Haven't seen downtown, it looks a little different. They've taken majority of those trees down in the last 2 days. So that's about as far as the momentum will last. We've kicked off our capital campaign. About 25% of what we expect the project to cost and fundraised so far. And we're hoping that this winter we can capture the rest and be ready to.
Excuse me, if you can hear me,
We can
It's
really
Bob
start raising
Foss.
some money now.
So
the microphone is off.
Can't really execute a lease agreement until
I know, that's, yeah.
but I think we're real close now.
I don't know what to do.
But what I'd like to ask the board to do tonight is contingent on the governor signing the deed. I have a copy of
Yeah.
all these
Yeah, we've all
documents in
agreed
front of
to
you.
copies of the deeds and the lease agreements.
Contingent on that, authorize me to sign the limited use license agreement that the state has prepared and that we've reviewed. We had a couple of changes. And then also approve contingent on the limited lease agreement and the governor's deed, authorize the approval of the lease and use agreement with the between the town and the chamber.
Yeah, we'll make a motion
I'll
on
make a
that.
motion to
Yeah.
approve those both. The
This would be the
lease
first
and
one,
use agreement and the limited use license agreement.
Yeah, contingent upon
the governor.
governor's.
On the governor's
Yeah.
deed signing.
So, yeah,
Second,
no seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right, motion carries. Good, that's exciting. Look at that.
Thank you
Very
much.
excited.
Move that along.
Forward on behalf of the chamber, we're excited to be working with you guys. And I know I've said before, but this is really about saving a historic building and trying to improve both the access to information and improve our ability to spread the word for businesses and stuff to visitors and again, try to clean up.
how's the support right now from the merchants?
I think everyone has heard about the plan and we've got someone that is, said that they're gonna donate all the flooring. We have another company that said that they're gonna donate part of everything, so.
Awesome.
Wow.
We start having some of these conversations, you know.
Yeah.
We'll get where we need to be. Get, a lot of elbow grease and time.
Great. Thank you.
If we can tolerate a little bit of an echo, I think we can hear people.
Sure, Jeff. Yeah,
All right.
yeah, we think we got the bugs worked out maybe temporarily.
I see Jim's on the line there too. Can we talk to him? Jim, can you hear me?
Well, I can hear you fine, yes.
Okay, good. Sounds like that's working. Did you have
Been
anything
watching.
to add to what John was saying?
No, I just wanted to make sure that we didn't sign a lease right now because we've got to have a deed before we can accept the lease from the town. And the governor's deed has one little gap in it that I think we can straighten out. It's not critical. It's just I wouldn't put it in there. That's the next to the last paragraph on the first page. But we could live with it. It's a little confusing and unnecessary. But, you know, the poor people up at the AG's office have to do something, so I guess
Okay.
drafting deeds probably isn't their strong point, but
So the board did approve is that me? Yeah, I guess it is. Who's that guy talking over me?
whoa.
So the governor, if the governor signs the deed, the board's action tonight allows for the approval of the lease agreement and the license agreement. So does that sound good to you? Okay, very good.
Two thumbs up.
Awesome.
So this is the top of the ninth or what?
Very similar.
Thank you, Jim.
I think it's the top of the first, but
There, whether Jeff's doing his best over here. So thank you, Jeff.
well, thank you all very much. I know this has been a long time coming. And it's going to strengthen the town and not just the commercial side of the town, but the ambiance of the town, the name recognition and everything. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. All right, we good? Yeah. Yeah, we can work through it, Jeff. We'll make it work. Oh, we ready?
Jeff, are we ready for the?
So we're gonna.
Presentation on Zoom?
They can share their screens.
Okay. Jan, sorry to keep you waiting, and Mike, sorry to keep you waiting. And also George, yeah, I guess we're ready to proceed. So if you want to put your PowerPoint up or your slides, we're set to go.
Thanks, Matt. I'll share my screen if possible.
And this is, I'm just going to say one thing. What Jan's talking about is, of course, a refinement of the 30% drawings that you reviewed previously. We're at the 60% level now. And after his presentation, I'd like the board to take action on the 60% design so that we could proceed to the 95% design and get this out to bid by the end of January. But if you have questions or there's some issues that are outstanding, of course, we can continue to work on those. So, Jan, go ahead.
Thank you, guys.
I can't hear you very, very loudly, but hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yes.
You can.
Okay. I want to thank the board for taking the time to go over this with us. What I've got up here is the existing conditions plan. You've all seen this before. I just wanted to get everybody oriented to how to what we're looking at. Again, the river's on the bottom of the page, Misery Gulf's on the left, and Water Street's on the right. So just to give you some overviews of the different components. What we have here is a site plan showing the new parking lot. Well, I say the new parking, the portion of the parking lot that's going to receive new pavement. It's essentially the entire area that the town owns. And then what we have in the colored lines are the locations of the walls. Now, the red and blue wall along the river and up Misery Gulch are the permanent wall locations, and the yellow wall is a deployable temporary wall system. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I know we've mentioned it in the past. The blue locations down here are locations that we will be putting view panels in the wall, meaning there'll be a notch, essentially a 2-foot tall notch in the wall. Again, the wall is going to be about 5 feet from existing grade, and that'll lower it down to 3 feet from existing grade in those 2 80-foot areas either side of the main entrance. There'll still be an opening for the boat launch. It'll be wide enough to accommodate the float system as pedestrians come off the float. They won't be running into a wall. They'll be able to come off. We've angled and realigned the wall a little bit to better align ourselves around the easement area for the pump station. We've got an access point adjacent to the pump station, as well as one central to the overall park area and aligning roughly with Taco Alley. We've done some again, this in part two to look at the storm drainage within the parking lot. We're redoing the storm drainage lines in the public portion of the parking lot, and we have located our stormwater storage system that'll accommodate both flooding events as well as rainfall events within the parking lot. We've shifted it up a little bit to get it outside the existing easement area that the sewage district has running through the middle of the parking lot there, so that we're outside of that. We won't run into a conflict with their easement rights. And as a result of that, we've had to, reshape it slightly, put a few steps in it, again, to maintain distance away from the new sewer line that we just placed closer to Main Street that now carries the trunk line through that area. The other thing that we've done too is we've gone with, this is a utilities plan where we're looking at the 3 poles that run along the edge of the river at the edge of the park and the parking lot right in that area. They're really going to be in conflict with that wall. So what we've done is we've looked at putting the infrastructure in the ground to put the primary electric underground and then have it come up at 2 locations within the existing parking lot to aerial poles. And essentially there's another aerial line that runs further in the parking lot that feeds these buildings in here and in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it overhead to here, then come underground and come up these 2 poles, one near the restroom and one near the old print shop. And so that minimizes what we have to do underground. We have reviewed this plan with CMP. They've got a few refinements, and we'll add those in as we move forward. This here is just a sense of what the wall profile look like. And then in terms of the deployable wall on the west side, it's a rolled up wall system that has fabric and reinforcing slats in it, as well as cables and other stay materials. So it forms like a large L with the flat portion of the L facing the water, and the weight of the water on that and the stays help keep this wall stable. And so it's rather quickly deployable and also provides that protection. In the notches in the wall, we've got 2 options that we're looking at. One is a visibility panel, which is a It's a high-strength flood-rated glass system that'll remain in place all the time. And another substitute to this would be a lower cost, which would be stop logs, which is similar to what you see in the figure on the right, which would be used both in the openings in the wall at the boat launch and at the pedestrian access to the park. And we could also use this system in the notches in the wall and the view panels. I just wanted to give you an idea here, a quick idea of what these underground storage, stormwater storage modules look like. They're basically large plastic crates. They are suitable to be driven on and so forth with enough, you have to have enough cover over the top of them, but they're strong enough and they've tested and they're under parking lots in hundreds of locations. So that would form your storage volume for your water. You're temporarily storing, it would fill up and then the water would drain out as the floodwater and the river receded and or the tide went out. The other thing that we've included in this particular 60% plans is in every catch basin is going to be a filter system. I know we had heard a lot of feedback in our meetings that cleaning the water, this is an opportunity to help clean the water up as it runs off the parking lot. And so we've looked at a variety of different ways to do that. And this is one of the systems that we feel is well suited for this particular application, where essentially we don't have a lot of area to put surface ponds or additional underground treatment. And it's fairly cost effective as well. Now the next part, this is the park portion. We'll get a little bit more in detail on that, but as you can see, the wall is the light gray line, and we're looking at implementing what we called option A, which is a walking path with access points here and here, as well as seating areas and sitting picnic areas, as well as incorporating a living shoreline elements into as much as possible into the shoreline as we can. These are some structural plans showing the sheet piling, and the sheet piling is going to be entirely below grade. The concrete wall portion is going to be about 2.5 feet wide, and roughly it'll be 5 feet above the existing elevations, tapering down to nothing on the eastern side rather, as the grade of the access way comes up. But you can see that and through these various areas of the wall height remains about 5 feet. We do have some openings, and what from our geotechnical profile, we've got an approximate guess on where the restrictive layer is, where we can bed the sheet piles into to provide additional support. And the other thing that we've done with this latest round is we've revisited the sides of the sheet pile. We've increased the weight of the sheet pile, the thickness of the walls, and so forth. We feel that it'll assist us with some of the driving and the long-term longevity of the system in general. Here are a few cross sections of the wall itself. This here is the top of the wall, the reinforcing within the concrete portion. The concrete portion again is about 2.5 feet wide. It extends about 2 feet below grade, and the sheet pile will be, the top of the sheet pile will be below grade. There'll be some overlap there, obviously, to give that transfer the rigidity of the upper wall and the strength of the upper wall to the sheet pile support and rigidity down below. And we've got the park plans that we're starting to develop. This is what we have here is we have a portion of the entire set. We didn't include all the different ones because we wanted to be able to run through it with you without getting into the little minor details and so forth. So again, the park area is going to be incorporating living shoreline elements. So we're going to be creating areas where we can have vegetation within the sloped and we're going to come up and make up grade with larger rocks and then create sloped areas where we can vegetate to help with that living shoreline element of this shoreline. So it'll be enhancing the habitat as well as the aesthetics of this, of the area right along the shoreline. And this is kind of a depiction. It's not a, it's just a typical type depiction. These slopes are likely to be much steeper and the vertical pieces are going to be much steeper, but those are the types of things that we'll be incorporating into the overall plan. We do have amenities in this plan, and I apologize for rushing through that, but we have individual seating out here, which would be like Adirondack type chairs. We have picnic tables. We have kiosks for informational purposes. There's a flagpole here that we've got proposed. Again, a lot of this is going to be, we'll be wanting feedback on this particular plan to make sure that what we go forward with from this point on is more in keeping with what the town really wants. We've shown a bike rack in this at the main entrance here as well. Incorporated a bike rack into that entrance design. And in terms of materials, we're looking at like a stabilized crushed stone surface for the walkways. We've got some pavers for the main entryway where you'd have a lot more traffic. And as it comes from the park area into the parking lot, those pavers, they would carry the pavers into the entrance area of to the parking lot. And then we've also talked about incorporating either an aisle for handicap cars that could also be used as pedestrian access through Taco Alley down and into the park. So that's a possibility. One of the things I know that there's currently there are a few handicap accessible parking spaces within the parking lot. They're scattered in different areas. This would tend to concentrate them in the center. We have to discuss that and make sure that that's the right location, or do we still scatter them and make this make accessibility here either through the parking spaces or with its own dedicated aisle. One other thing that I didn't touch on in the initial site plan, excuse me for scrolling back up through, is the access to Water Street and the access enhancements through Taco Alley. Again, this is going to be a paver type surface that connects to the sidewalk at Main Street and brings down through Taco Alley into the municipal parking lot in this area. And then on the Water Street, the eastern side, we're showing a parking lot, a sidewalk that would start basically at the end of the wall and then come up the side of the access way to Water Street. And there would be some sort of a crosswalk in this location or slightly around the corner here. We're just looking at what might be the best solution there, but we may want to come around the corner here and cross here. This is in combination with some stormwater improvements we're also making up here on Water Street. There's some structures up there that are in really tough shape, but we'd look at doing those enhancements as well. And then I don't know if Mike, if you want to add anything to any of this. The next piece is the cost estimate, but if you'd like to add anything to any of these.
You summarized it fantastic, Jan. The only thing I would add, I think that I didn't hear was there's a kayak storage rack as well on the over near the sewer pump station that's also being proposed. Yep, right in that area, correct.
Right in this area here, right by the sewer. And that there's an existing one there now, and this plan incorporates, it does take away one of the parking spaces here, but we can certainly discuss that. I know that parking spaces are a valuable commodity in that area. So the next portion of what we looked at, and let me zoom out on this just a little bit. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Do this again.
Can we ask a couple of questions on the design?
Sure.
Okay, having sat in a couple of public meetings about this, other than the requirement to receive the grant, there's not a lot of support for the 5-foot wall. So, and there also isn't a lot of support for the glass wall on top. But that being said, could you explain the length of the openings? Because I can't I can't see that on the diagram.
Hopefully this will give you a better idea. The openings are in blue.
We
And
don't
these-
have the blue coloring. We don't have color.
Blue color in this. I don't know if you can see that or not. I'll zoom in a little bit more.
Is it the hash mark portion of the one you gave me previously?
Yeah.
John?
Yes, they're a hash mark, and they're about 80 feet long, and they're 2 view corridors. Plus, you have a 20-foot opening here at the entrance to the park as well. And we've offset these about 30 or 40 feet either side of that entrance. And you know, those are designed to at least allow some or better view of the water from the parking lot. The other thing that we're doing, again, is we're raising the grade in the parking lot just slightly. So just to accommodate all the different things that we're doing in the parking lot, at least in some of the areas, we're raising that grade. So the differences will be somewhat dampened by those raises and grades in terms of the view for most people.
Another question is, on the columns that support the logs that slide in, are those going to be in place all the time, or are they part of the?
That's a good question. The wall systems that we're looking at have columns that aren't in place all the time. So what we're looking at is about a 10-foot long stop log. So, and we've built this around a 10-foot long stop log system. So these 80-foot openings would have 6 intermediate columns that would be placed at the time you're building your barrier. And they have a system that goes in very quickly. There's a cover plate over the base that you remove. You can stick a column in there, twist the column, it locks it in place, and then place your stop logs. And the same would be said for the opening at the boat ramp. And there'd be one intermediate column in this opening where the pedestrians are here. And this pedestrian opening is a 10-foot opening that wouldn't have any intermediate columns. There would be columns along either edge of the wall, channels basically, that would have a cover on them, like a stainless steel cover that you'd pull off and then slide the logs in there so that you don't build up debris and other things in those columns, in those channels that would interfere with putting the stop logs in.
Is there any reason why you didn't put another opening down here towards Water Street?
An additional opening down here. There's no real reason. We at that end, the grade of the parking lot comes up considerably too. So if you can see, if you don't mind, I'll scroll down to the profile of the wall over here, and you can see at this end the wall's 0 height in terms of the differential in height, and then it gets to full height probably around this location, which is relatively close to that opening, and then it slowly tapers up as the grade climbs.
And lastly, Misery Gulch over there from the boat ramp, there's a long run there towards the red building. Is there any opening in there?
Along Misery Gulch, there's no opening in this particular area here.
Would there be?
Well, we sought some input from Matt, Bob, and George, and we kind of felt that, and from the public, we didn't hear a strong desire to have an opening there necessarily. So we didn't include one there. That wall could be an opportunity for some other type of use as well, in terms of you know, informational boards with
Right.
historical stuff or other things like that, that you could put there.
But there is no structural reason why it couldn't be an opening there, is that right?
That's correct. The only other thing that comes into play, the only other consideration is that the more openings you have, the more time it will take to close those openings in the event of a storm. So just keep that in mind. Now, that may not be very often, so it may not, it may not matter that much, or you may have sufficient hands to be able to do to close all those openings relatively quickly. But just keep that, that's another consideration.
Do you have any information as to how long it takes to put one of those temporary walls in place from other towns that have used them?
We don't from other towns. We do have there are some videos available that demonstrate similar types of closing of similar types of gaps. And what I recall, there was I did watch a video on closing a gap that was about 20 feet wide with a center post that had to be put in and about 5 feet high. And that overall process took about less than 10 minutes. Granted, all the equipment was there, everything else was there. So they just started working, not at a fevered pace, but at a practiced pace, I would say. And it took them about 10 minutes to close up this opening here. So, we'll have to extrapolate that and what it might take to both get the material there, and get that particular job done to see what it would take. Again, working on top of the wall, it may go faster because you're only putting in 2 feet, but of wall panel, or depending upon that, or if you wanted to use glass panels. I know there was not a lot of desire for that, but we thought we'd keep it in because it is something that could be done. You wouldn't have to plan to put those panels in, or wouldn't have to take time in your planning or your practicing to put those in. And they're very rugged. I mean, they're meant to withstand, forces from both water as well as things in the water without breaking.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Yeah. Any other questions at this point? Board?
Jan, you're going to talk about the phasing when you get to the budget, right?
Yes. So what we've done is we put together, I hope you can see this, and if not, I will zoom in a little bit here.
Each of the board members has a copy.
So they do. Okay, great. So what we've done is we've gone down and chunked the project into different components. The first one is really, it's project wide. Now, these are things like traffic control that has to be done throughout the overall project, temporary construction fence, things like that, erosion control that you'd have to do for any or all of these components. So that's the first section. The next one is the flood barrier itself. So this is the wall, the concrete, that deployable wall that we were talking about, any kind of openings, filling up those with stop logs. There's going to be some excavation required for this because we need to go down a couple of feet, 2 or 3 feet in each location along the entire alignment of the wall, so we can install and form the concrete and so forth. So all of that comes to about 1.8 million for that particular component of the project. The stormwater component, again, that includes the tanks, the new stormwater lines, putting backflow preventers on the outlet locations that we have for that stormwater. That comes to about just under $800,000. The parking lot improvements, this is the paving of the parking lot, well, first of all, reclaiming the surface. Again, some of this is going to be disrupted by the installation of the tanks, but we tried to account for that in the overall cost here. This incorporates the improvements to the sidewalk going up to Water Street, the Taco Alley sidewalk, and some granite curbing that we're putting in and so forth, and that comes to just under $400,000. Moving down into the electrical infrastructure, we broke this out into two different phases because, for one, we were looking at, in terms of if your funding doesn't match the funding for the overall project, we certainly would have to cut something out, and that's likely be the wall. And so the critical pieces to put in for the electrical infrastructure would be conduits, pull boxes, things like that would go in with the parking lot reconstruction, and that comes to about 112,000. And then followed by actually moving the power over and installing some site lighting where you currently have site lighting on those 3 poles, and that would be about 330,000. So that would come at the time when you're doing the wall project, because CMP is unlikely to, or they might, if you wanted to take that on now, they were concerned that their pool boxes would get flooded with salt water. So if we were able to do this and in a way that was staged, we broke these out into 2 different components. They could go all as one too, if CMP would get comfortable with it. And we had a meeting with them this week, and I think there's a way to do that. So, so that was encouraging. And then the living shoreline and landscape improvements came to about $200,000. And again, some of that work really needs to be done. The living shoreline work, because of the restriction in space that we have with that park area only being about 12 or 15 feet wide, working to place new stones and do that sort of work, you really can't do it with the wall in place there. So you'd have to do that before the wall. And we built in about a 15% contingency, and the total project cost came to about $4.2 million. And down the bottom here, these are 2 different, this would be added to that, would be, these are the 2 visibility panels that we'd looked at. One would be the stop log, and the other would be the glass flood barrier. As you can see, the glass flood barrier is quite a bit more expensive, but we wanted to at least show you those numbers. So currently, I believe the town has about $2.9 million, including the contingency. And if we were to remove just the wall component, or remove the wall from the project, that would bring that would bring it down to about $1.82 million, would be reduced by about 1.8 million, which bring it out to 2.4 to 2.6 million, depending upon what you use for the visibility panel option. So we feel that, that's potentially one way to phase this, and then to seek additional funding for the wall portion. So, which has been suggested to the town by EDA as a strategy.
Jan?
Yes.
A question on the flood barrier. Trying not to listen to my own voice. The concrete form liner number 5, that is that assumes the etching or some type of texture in the wall, correct?
That's correct. That could be brick or stone. There's a whole host of options. It could be some pattern that's repeatable, and they would just move the form liners. As they move the forms down, the form liners would go down, and there'd be some sort of a repeating pattern.
If I could, I'd just like to address the issue of phasing. It's the most important priority to the town is to get that drainage repaired. And then, of course, we want to do the flood resiliency improvement for what's going to occur with sea level rise in the decades ahead. So with that in mind, we've talked extensively to EDA about the idea of having two phases. And I just clarified it this week again, or got in writing basically again this week, that EDA would like us to go out for bid with the entire project, but also have an alternate bid for the flood wall. And they would like, and we would like us, assuming that the flood wall is going to come in at anywhere close to these prices, they want us to go out and with that bid without the flood wall, go ahead, make the improvements. In other words, construct the improvements minus the flood wall, and then we know exactly how much we have left over and we can apply for additional funds. So I thought that was a kind of a key milestone in our discussions with EDA, that they're not only amenable to that alternative, but they want us to do that because they want to be fairly certain what all the other elements are going to cost before they approve the flood wall.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And it could be years between the two. We could be in a position where we're building all the other improvements next year and maybe the spring of the following year, and then it's going to take a while to finalize the design with the historical elements and then go out for bid with the rest of the project, and at the same time ask for more money from EDA and come up with our local match for those EDA dollars.
And Matt, one of the things that I would agree with you with the stormwater improvements as we have proposed because of the backflow prevention we're putting on is going to really help some of the more frequent flooding type threats that you have there.
The only time, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only time that the tide waters have breached the park was 1978. It came close in 2018, but the only time it actually came over the park was modern history is 1978. So we know that it's going to occur with more frequency, but just to give you the historical background, it's not been the issue. The issue has been the ponding in the parking lot.
Yeah, the stormwater removal. Yeah. So that's, you know, the phasing it 2 phases will give us the opportunity to, well, one thing that we have to take into account is the long-term overlap. You know, there's always cost incurs with doing two different phases, so we need to make sure that
That's a good point.
incorporate some long-term stuff in there.
The big downside in not doing the whole project at once is you've got two sets of mobilization costs, and you have the potential for having to tear up some of the first phase product to start the second phase. In other words, you're installing this huge wall with the pilings, and you've got to drive over that, and you may have to tear up some of that asphalt that you put down a few years before. So that is a downside, no doubt about it.
Yeah, we just want to account for it, know what be realistic about it, but it's. Are there anybody, any questions from board at this point on budget or costs or anything?
I'm still processing.
You're still processing. I said, Josh, I see in your eyes, you've got some questions going there. Yeah, it's a lot to take in. Yeah.
I get a question on how did you ride that 3 inches of hot top in the parking lot, in the commercial parking lot?
The what we've done is the 3 inches of let me see, let me go up to that. Yeah, that was arrived at by, first of all, we're going to have a better base than we currently have. And so 3 inches is commonly what's put down. I mean, ideally, you know, you might want to go a little bit heavier. It depends on what you have there, but we felt that was at least the minimum.
We should factor in above minimum then.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of commercial parking lots that get a lot more than 3 inches, that's all.
And that's something we can certainly look at. We can look at increasing that to, to something greater than that.
A lot of use of that parking lot.
Just like bring heavy equipment back in 2-3 years.
Yeah. So we definitely don't want to probably skirt on the minimum of anything for long term.
The only concern I have is for snow removal. One of the concerns I have.
Yeah, it's going to change the aspect of that
Yeah.
completely.
The snow removal?
Yeah.
It shouldn't. Right now, the only place we're permitted to push snow is on the launch area. So
I know that, but I know where some of it goes and I don't have a problem with it.
our permit doesn't allow for it to go any other places but the launch and then the Howard and Bowie parking lot.
I was just going to ask on the area approaching Water Street, on the upper end of the parking lot, that's a tight squeeze in there. Picture and then just looking at it with the added sidewalk on, and I don't know what our easements are and how's that overlap, Matt? Do you know?
Yeah. Measured it.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely needs a change up there, but how
we did
feasible is
discuss
that?
it, and I'm going to meet with Jan and Mike out on the site. I have talked to the owner of that property.
Yeah, I know you said you met with the
several
owner.
times,
Yeah.
And although this doesn't show us acquiring any more right of way, she, the owner, is
Yeah.
willing to grant us right of way for that. And what we talked about was, and this is what we've got to see on site, is that if we would agree to pave her little pullout there,
Yep.
she would give us the right of way for the sidewalk.
Yeah.
But I know Jan wanted to take a look at it, but I also felt that the driveway is way too tight to try to put a 5-foot walk in there.
Yeah. It looks, on the plans, it looks good on there, but
Yeah.
in execution, it might be a little tight there, so.
Yeah.
Just want to take a closer look at it.
Tom just asked me what was on the other side, the north, I guess it'd be the north side of that lot, and that's the post office parking.
Yeah.
That
No, to the
Jim,
right. It belongs to this company.
that's a grassy area there. Yeah, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, cut into
But
that.
that's,
Yeah, that's on, yeah.
we just need,
I
need an
don't know.
on-site look. And
I don't know if that would work, but that's something, yeah, we could look at that. Yeah. Did you catch that, Jan?
Yeah, I did.
Seen that
I
we-
did. As a matter of fact, I was out there this week looking at that
Currently
myself.
not used by the property owners, just
Right.
open space.
It's weeds, yeah. Weeds or open space, depending on
Whatever
your.
open space sounds so
Open
much
space,
nicer.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. There's a lot to process here. Any other questions at this point? Josh, your brain's stewing down there. I know you.
It's doing.
Did you want to take more time?
You may want to make a
look
list
through the
and-
documents that we sent out and maybe take action on this
Yeah.
in 2 weeks?
That'd be good.
Yeah.
I just don't want to hold up the works, and I know there's timetables.
Jan, what's your take on that?
I would rather have you be more comfortable or have time to develop questions, so that we get good direction before we really launch into some other things. In the meantime, we can certainly come out and take a look at a couple of these areas you've already mentioned.
Yeah, let's do that. That we can really process it now that we've had the presentation, and any questions, we can write them down and get them answered beforehand, so.
Jan, I got a question for you as far as those tanks that are there to pick up the drainage water from the rain. and there's probably right here in front of me. How much coverage do you have over the top of those?
We've got, they require a minimum of 20 inches, and I think we've used 24 to 28 inches and sometimes even more than that, but we used a minimum of 24 inches over the top of those.
Thank you.
Oh, before I forget, Jan, I had another question. Mark reminded me when he was asking about the catch basins there, and sorry, the tanks. The filter system, the Fabco storm basin
Yes.
system, the filtration system. Do you know what the maintenance? What the maintenance is to that? Is that a reusable or something needs to be cleaned out?
It needs to be cleaned out. You can clean them out and backwash them, but then you also, every so often, you have to replace them. So it's somewhat dependent upon, how high, and this is a relatively high use parking lot. So
Yeah.
your frequency of cleaning is going to be on the more frequent side than some other lots potentially that have these systems. So it's really hard to tell up front, although they do give you some guidance, and we can certainly let you know what the company's guidance is on the frequency of cleaning, just so you know.
Yeah, thank you. That's something we have to look at in future matters, maintenance costs on that unit, who would do it and when, so, okay. That's all I had up to this point, so. There's no other comments, questions from the board at this point for Jan or Mike or George?
Matt, did you want me to talk a little bit about the meeting that we had the other day?
Yeah, that would be good. Well, Jan and Mike are on the line as well. Yep. Is that okay?
Yeah,
We'll move
yeah,
back to the
yeah. So
historical.
we're going to the, this is the historic,
Yeah.
the historic
Tom-
elements.
Tom attended that as well.
Right.
so-
So we'll, we'll have George start a little report on the waterfront project, historic elements focus group meeting.
Yeah, well, we have a committee made up of myself, Barnaby Porter, Haas, Sherry Sage, Sally Bodett. Tom Anderson was there. Louis on the committee. He didn't make it the other day, but so there was a number of really good suggestions. Tom had suggested maybe considering doing a couple of specialty panels in the form liner part, maybe by the main entryway that actually depicted the scene of a ship or whatever. You can do these. I don't know if Wright Pierce knows how much extra, if you had like 2 or 4 of these kind of panels, how much would need to allocate for that? Because obviously we're not going to design them at this point. It would be down the road a piece, but that's one possibility. Valerie Seibel, who was the chairman of the Historical Society, suggested using the wall along Misery Gulch and put some plaques up there that would explain some history of Damariscotta and that sort of thing. Haas, as you may remember from a few meetings ago, would like to see the replicas of the masts of the Ocean Herald, which is a ship built up in this part of the river. One of those mast flagpoles, I guess he calls them, would be 165 feet high, which I think there was a little support amongst the other members. Haas would like to at least see a cost estimate of what they would cost, just able to make that decision. So at the meeting this afternoon, Bob Fonts had looked up what a cost of a 165-foot flagpole would be, and it was like about $60,000 plus shipping, plus installation, plus foundation. So we're going to be putting together what we think are, cost of something like that. My own personal feeling is that the scale will be way out of whack. I don't feel that that's good. One suggestion that I have is considering
building a full-size section of the stern and bow section of the ship and actually placing them in the park, 256 feet apart, say centered on the main entrance. It wouldn't be a solid hull. It would be made out of like a wireframe that you could actually see through. But all of that, I said we could probably build a simplified computer model to really take a look at what that's going to look like, so everybody, can either give the thumbs up or thumbs down or whatever. So those are, and Sherry Sage would like to, not historical so much, but like to see some specialty design work on the little plaza as you're coming through the wall, as well as consideration of other materials for the walkway, which Jan had said was going to be a crushed rock walkway at this point. So those are really what came out of the meeting. I thought it was a good meeting, and I think people came away feeling good. So I guess that's, we'll be talking more about it as this thing proceeds along. Hopefully we'll have one more meeting, and then maybe some further, visuals of what some of the stuff might look like.
I would add a couple of comments.
Thank you, George. Yep.
Yep.
I'd add a couple of comments. I know that Barnaby Porter sort of emphasized keeping it simple and not putting too much there to clutter up the environment. And Valerie also sort of encouraged that. And there were other creative ideas about how to depict the history. And there was also sort of a concurrence that the history should include the indigenous people, the oyster middens, the oyster industry, the brickmaking industry, and the shipbuilding predominantly. I think uniformly everybody agreed with emphasizing shipbuilding, because that was sort of a major thing exclusive to Damariscotta. And one suggestion was to have a walking historical tour organized maybe with volunteer docents, as opposed to a whole bunch of art and plaques and trying to write it all against the wall, which wouldn't be as complete. We have that woman that does the Cape Walk or whatever, the ghost thing or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
But I also suggested the possibility of acquiring a building on Main Street to make a permanent museum of the artifacts and the history of the city. But that's obviously a big deal and a long-term thing. But there were a lot of good thoughts. It was the first meeting of this group. There will be other meetings, and as Barnaby said, we're going to have to reduce the focus down to a couple of ideas. And I think the mass that Haas is advocating for, it's not gonna make the cut.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Sounds like there's a lot of good ideas coming out of it, so keep plugging away. So.
Can I jump back to?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
John, I got one question. I jump back to the project itself. Is availability of the products that you're speccing in here, and any delays, what do you see there that's going to be a challenge?
Well, I know that we're seeing this in on other projects, things like pipe, because of resin availability. Those crates are certainly resin based as well. So we don't know yet. We've been talking to the reps, the people that rep this material, and they say that they give you a particular lead time, but there could be some availability problems. It seems to be pretty ubiquitous in the construction industry now. That there's wide ranging different products that have supply chain issues, or for whatever reason you can't get as quickly as you could in the past. So that's certainly something that will play itself out once we go to construction. And we'll either have to be creative, or we'll have to be able to tolerate some stretch in this construction schedule.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Right. Well, thank you, guys.
Just to add to that, if the wall's going to be at the same time, I'm sorry, the steel sheeting, and particularly with an EDA grant, would most likely be required to be American, steel, certainly. So anything, steel, metal related out there, may become problematic during those phases as well. So having them, be available to order those materials as soon as possible, once it's bid is kind of a critical step in the process.
Fair enough. Thank you, guys. Yeah. I'm sure we'll have some more questions for you as we process everything. Well, if there's no more questions or comments on the presentations, we'll move on. Matt, did you want to touch base on your October 28th meeting with the DOT?
Yeah, maybe we can shut off the Zoom portion
Jeff's
of
on
this.
top of that.
Okay. Yeah, and like Tom and Mark to give their take on the meeting as well. I guess the highlight of the meeting was the fact that Maine DOT has come up with a design for improving the safety aspects of the intersection at Belvedere and the bypass. And they've actually dedicated the dollars in the third year of their 3-year plan, 2024. I think we were all very happy to see that. That the idea that they put forward was a roundabout at the intersection. My initial reaction is very positive, but I've just been talking to a few people since then about that idea, and I'm getting a mixed reaction. I guess what I'm going to suggest is that Maine DOT come to the meeting in 2 weeks and provide their PowerPoint to the full board. Mm-hmm. And also people can either watch it here or watch it via YouTube, and you could see the logic and see and hear about the other alternatives that they looked at. So
yeah,
that's my take on it.
Yeah.
Mark,
I was going to ask you, Mark,
you want to say something, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we talked about was if we were to make a dead end street coming down from Business Route 1 down Belvedere, and then make that a dead end, and then let them spend their money up in front of Hunt's to a roundabout would actually take care of that situation too. But I think they felt like the safety factor was higher down at the project where they were
right
interested in. But I do feel like some of them there felt we should look at that a little closer, maybe. That was the take I got onto it.
For some reason, they also suggested it'd be more expensive up there. I don't understand that because there's already a part of it already in place. But they definitely overall they were leaning towards the roundabout at Belvedere.
That's an interesting concept. Yeah, I wouldn't have expected from them. So,
well, one thing I would like to say is I know Mark and Josh see this stuff all the time because what they do, but I was really impressed with the statistics that they provided to support their case. I had no idea that they have every turn documented as to how many people turned in a given day this way or that way, and how many accidents and what the nature of the accident was, whether it was a fatality or property injury, bodily injury, whatever. They had supporting data for their arguments as to everything that they suggested. And they also were making recommendations for School Street and Business 1, and also the School Street and Bristol Road. And they indicated that they were going to make an immediate change to the Bristol Road signage to move it further down Bristol Road towards town, so it doesn't block the view when you're looking down to turn left. You're looking down to see if anybody's coming from the Miles Hospital. So they said they're going to do that right away. I haven't checked.
I haven't either. They-
But I don't think it's been done yet. But anyway, they committed to doing that right away. And that was impressive because they right in the meeting, he emailed somebody and said, do it.
Yeah.
So it was something they could do quickly and cheaply. So they agreed to do that. But they also have a long-term plan for that intersection. And they sort of outlined that in general, but
Matt, will that be maybe part of their presentation when they get them a couple of weeks, just to
Sure,
brief
yeah.
us on that too?
I'll have 'em-
Yeah,
I'll have them discuss all three.
yeah.
It'll be a long presentation.
Yeah, it depends on
okay.
what they have. I mean, we can
Yeah,
feel it out.
We met,
Yeah. See what-
we met for 3 hours.
Yeah.
So I've asked them to abbreviate the Belvedere part of it to a half hour
Yep.
plus Q&A, but this will probably bring it up to an hour if we
What-
haven't talked
what-
about all
yeah,
three.
Is the board okay with?
I think it's an important issue, and I think
is,
what-
yeah.
what's important that we need to talk about more is what are we gonna do in the meantime? Because that is such a dangerous intersection, as
It is.
Josh knows, he's been out there many times, and we hear it all the time, those accidents. And what's interesting is, and the reason that I like the idea of making that a dead-end street is because a lot of your accidents are coming from the south, and it's people that move over in the breakdown lane, even tractor trailers,
Yeah.
going to take a right there, and then the cars stay in the lane and keep going, and the ones that are coming from that Belvedere extension from Business Route 1 are actually pulling out and having accidents.
Yeah.
So,
It's a scary spot.
they
Yeah.
talking about striping, talk about removing some of that lane, they got some ideas of cutting down the billards that's out there so you can see over them.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's important that we really get something out there.
well, I think they
Move
committed, yeah, I think they committed for the next year that they at least cut down those, what do they call them?
Bullards.
Bollards.
Yeah.
Because of complaints about visibility over the top for motorcycles and smaller cars. So they committed to doing that. But they, for whatever reason, weren't real crazy about the dead end street. I'm not sure why, but.
One of them, I think, was the tractor trailer issue.
Oh, that's right, going up to the.
Yeah, can a tractor trailer truck make that turn onto Business Route 1?
Well, let's get them in here next meeting, and we can bring these
The other issue
ideas up. Yeah.
that that several of us have inquired about on several occasions is why not just reduce the speed limit
Yeah.
so that it's 45 south of Belvedere, but the response we get back is that
Don't make any difference.
people will ignore the speed limit.
Yeah.
So-
Well, and we've seen it backfire.
So if you lower the speed limit to 45, but you won't do that, but you put a roundabout in that will reduce the speed to 25.
20 or 25, yeah.
So
Yeah.
how the hell does that make any sense?
Well, it's a good question for.
Well, they had a,
week, so.
they had another example where they did a roundabout in a similar situation. They said it worked really well. But there's an awful lot of traffic that goes through there north and south all the time. So it's questionable as to whether or not it's going to back up, especially in the summer.
Yeah.
Right, and then
Right.
the thing is you have that intersection there and you slow it down there. And then you get up to Hunts and you slow it down there as well.
Yeah.
So if
The
you,
only thing I was thinking.
We'll move things
Yeah.
along. We've got them coming in 2 weeks, so we can.
Yeah, I asked them if they said they could come do a presentation. I just need to confirm with them that they can come in
Yeah.
2 weeks, the
Yeah,
17th.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think everybody's got some really valid points, and we'll put it all together and make sure we can put them in the hot seat, and we'll get some answers. Oh, yeah. Sounds good. It's an interesting concept, though. Yeah. All right, so we are back into, let's move along. That's all for your managed items, and we'll move
there's no
into,
citizen comments.
well, we were gonna table that for now.
She could make it.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna make it in, so we're gonna table that, Josh, and move on. Yeah, so we've already discussed the Information Bureau. That's made a motion on that. It's tentative to the agreement, the governor's agreement. So we want to move on to assessor's agent
Mhm.
confirmation. Oh,
I sent you all the proposed contract with the
Yes.
assessing firm.
Yep.
That's being recommended, and it mirrors what they had sent us in the proposal.
Mhm.
I'm asking for you to confirm my appointment of Rob Duplessier and Company.
I'll make that motion to confirm Rob Duplessier and RJD appraisals.
Second.
As, yeah. Lou seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right, yep, no opposed, motion carries.
Impressive.
Yep.
Yeah, he did a good job. Excited to start working with him. All right. And we'll move on to code enforcement officer. So we have an interim code enforcement officer at
We
this
have an
point.
interim code enforcement officer, as I mentioned to some of you previously. We didn't get any responses, almost 5 weeks of advertising.
Yeah,
However, in the last week, I've had two potential candidates for the permanent, in quotes, permanent position. And Cheryl and I will be interviewing the two gentlemen next Wednesday.
oh,
We
okay.
have the two interviews set up for that. So if someone else wants to participate in that, I'd welcome that. Always would like another perspective on it. So I think two good candidates, and
That's good.
we're
news.
very fortunate that Joe Rose has agreed to take it on an interim basis, but he definitely does not want
Doesn't wanna do
it
it full
long
time.
term. Yeah.
All right. All right, we hear a motion on, I'll confirm, I'll make a motion to confirm the appointment of Joe Rose as the interim code enforcement officer.
Second that.
Seconds, any discussion? All those in favor?
Thank you.
Opposed, passes.
I have three more suggested appointees. Ann Jackson, Marianne Mosian, and Dan Hunter all would like to be on the committee. That would bring it up to 10 people, and I'm still looking.
I'll make a motion, we accept Matt's recommendation.
Second.
2 seconds, any discussion? All those in favor? All right, motion carries. Yep, need to repeat on the
Repeat
names,
on the
Matt.
names.
You can leave those back off. Yeah.
I'll give them to you. Yeah, I've got it printed out.
Thank you, Linda.
I know everybody probably knows these people, but do you have any background on them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ann Jackson has been on the planning board for several years now. She was involved in an interim planning panel that we had following the Sherwin-Williams Dollar General development, and that panel came up with some recommendations that we've since implemented. So she's a very much an engaged.
So they're all
individual. She's a school
experienced
teacher.
people.
And then Marianne and Dan are married, and you've approved Dan for appointment to the Financial Advisory Committee and the Budget Committee previously. And Marianne has been very active on the Public Safety and Accessibility Collaborative, particularly in the bicycle arena. You heard a presentation from her
Right,
a few weeks ago.
okay, thanks.
Thank you, Matt. And that's all we have for official action as of right now, right?
Yeah,
Anything from?
right, that's right. We don't have,
Okay.
the contracts will continue to stay on the table list.
All right, sounds good, Matt. So selectmen's discussion items. We'll start down on the end here with Tom. If you've got anything to add to the evening.
I just want to publicly thank the MDOT for acting so, at least intentionally, promptly to address the intersection of School and Bristol Road. They had stats. They were nice enough to investigate the accidents that occurred there, and they seem to justify that kind of action and other actions. So, by the way, just informationally, they stated that the Belvedere intersection was like the third worst in terms of accidents in the state for a similar intersection. So anyway, I want
Something you want to be known for.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
That's
Tom.
it.
Lou?
I have nothing.
I just got a question on deed work. Just to make sure we get all the deed work done in the back parking lot. Which I guess that's a question. Has it all been done with the property owners by the bathroom? And then even the sewer, you were gonna check with the town attorney.
As far as the deed work goes, let's see, all of the area that is considered the public parking, that was completed, that deed work was completed several years ago. One thing that I noticed when we started to talk about the restroom and the parking on Taco Alley is that we were encroaching onto the capacity Gilbert Gay Incorporated building property by about 2.5 feet. So the agreement that I worked out with Susan Murphy was that we would give her the thumb of that property in exchange for property we had taken from her over the years. She agreed to that. We've got Amanda Meter, who's been very responsive on that. But the surveyor that we hired for that has taken a few months. And this week, the day before yesterday, I got the deed description. So now Amanda can move forward on that. I'll have that on your agenda for next week. We have an easement for Taco Alley that is a trail easement. Jenny Villeneuve is working on getting that tightened up. And then once we have this agreement with Grace Goldberg worked out for Savory Main and the sidewalk up to Water Street, that would be the last one. So basically 3 in the works.
And then the town attorney, you were gonna check with about the sewer line, just the one page from.
Oh, the one page. I believe what we have suffices, but to be honest with you, I haven't had a chance to check on that since the last meeting.
If you could, just because we're doing all that work.
I know. So they did send me, the sewer district did send to me a document that formalized that, but I need to pull that out, send it to the attorney and say, is this enough?
Yeah, great. Just want to be sure. Thank you, Matt.
Sure. That's all I have.
All right.
I'm all good.
Josh, quiet down there. So, yes, Jeff.
Could I make a comment as a resident?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. Gotta come up and introduce yourself now.
Yes. I'm Jeff Kachakian. I live on School Street. And I was actually speaking with Mark before the meeting about this. I've noticed between School Street going north on Business One, between School Street and Napa, there's that stream that runs under the road there. The upstream side clearly is backed up somehow. With this last huge rainfall, that whole area became a lake. Like you couldn't see any vegetation at all, it was all water. And I'm concerned that it's going to start to undermine the road there. And I think, Mark, you said you spoke with Seth Hager about that and said that there may be some beaver activity or something going on there. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention. I don't know if anyone else has noticed it. I know you have, Mark.
We had some follow-up on that, Matt, didn't we? Yeah.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
I spent a good part of
Timely
Sunday
question.
tromping through the woods here and down on Church Street.
It concerns me a little bit.
Yeah.
You had to get video of that. I talked to the fire chief about it. By the time I got there, well, about 8:30 in the morning, Maine DOT staff and the fire department had already been down there to check it out. I was somewhat skeptical because the state has just been in there to remove the beaver dams, but these little fellows work overnight and they
works 24/7.
they cause quite a problem. That needs to be addressed. We need to do some trapping there, or the state needs to do some trapping. But it is a big concern. I started out looking at Church to see how the culvert was there. And that was, according to our engineer, after reviewed the videos that I sent him, that was adequate. The 8-foot steel culvert there. But the one up here, you're right. The water was coming under the road in 3 areas. It was gushing under the road in 3 areas other than the culvert itself. So.
And I can tell you that on Sunday, it was actually backed up, that stream was backed up to the bottom of our property.
Yeah.
3-4 houses in, so.
We had a new
ways.
pond in Damariscotta that day.
Yeah. Okay, good. I just
So
wanted
it
to bring
is,
to your attention. I'm
it
glad to hear
is
that.
certainly on the radar.
And there was a beaver sitting there watching it.
Yeah, that's what the chief told me. Yeah.
So do we tax you on waterfront property now?
I was just gonna make a note. Jeff has waterfront property.
I'll
Now.
put that
Not
in your
anymore.
assessor.
It has receded.
We'll move that along.
on my line.
You want to
Yeah.
track her down?
That was a great timely
Thank you.
question. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
And I think we should, I thank Matt for traipsing around and following up on it, on his days off.
I had to go to the doctor's office yesterday to have a tick removed, so I don't know. I think that was the cause.
Yeah. It was in line of duty. That's right. I have nothing to add to this evening. So we'll move on to the last item on the agenda.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. Top seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, lead reporter.
Thank you. Thank you. Keep it lively and upbeat for you.